All right, so Unit 3 review. So Unit 3 was all about fractions, right? It was fractions and some decimals and order of operation with that stuff. So again, I think for the most part, I'm just going to do a bunch of examples, but let's go over a couple of key concepts, a couple key things that you're going to need to know here. One of them, before we get going, is going to be how to change a decimal into a fraction. So let's just quickly review that. So here, so we'll say decimal to fraction. Decimal to frac. All right, so you guys remember the way we did this. Let's say I want to change like the number 0.2 into a fraction. Okay. So the way we do this is, well, if I'm looking at where that 2 is, I'm in the 10th spot, right? So I could just really say that this is a number over 10, right? That's what it means to be in the 10th spot. So in this case, this would be the same thing as, so just the number that shows up. I'm not going to throw the 0 in there again, but I'm just going to write down 2 over, and then I'm in the 10th spot, so it's over 10. And then while we're here, this would be a good time to review how to simplify fractions, right? 2 over 10, maybe some of you guys are probably doing this in your head. Simplifying that, that's the same thing as, well, I can divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2, right? So that'd be the same thing as 2 divided by 2 is 1, 10 divided by 2 is 5. That's the same thing as 1 over 5. Okay, so as I get doing some of these other questions, I'm going to be converting some of these decimals into fractions, right? Just to kind of work with them a little bit easier. Okay, the next one, let's do percentage of a number. Okay, so we'll say percent of a number. Now the hashtag, a number. Okay, so what if we had something like this? That could be something like, what is 20% of 14? Okay, so I'll maybe tell you 2 ways of doing this, right? The first way, the way that you might do if you had your phone with you at the store or something like that, right? If they were saying it was 20% off, or you had like a 20%, it was 20% more, whatever it might be, you want to leave a 20% tip, you might grab your calculator. And the way you would do that then is you'd say, all right, 20% written as a decimal. Remember, 20% is the same thing as 0.20, or just 0.2 would be the same thing. And then it's just that times 14, right? So that would get you the right answer. So you type in 0.2 times 14, and you'd end up with 2.8, of course. And so that's the one way to do it. Now, how could you do that without a calculator? So here's a nifty little trick here. So if I'm going 20% of 14, right? Then all I need to do is just multiply the numbers without the 0. Like, I don't need to include the 0 in this. I can just go 2, right? Just 2 times 14. So 2 times 14. So 2 times 14 is equal to 28. And then the only place, and then I just got to put the decimal in the only place that makes sense. So the only place that would make sense here would be right there, right? 2.8 would be, roughly 20% of 14. It wouldn't make any sense to say 28, and it wouldn't make any sense to say 0.28, right? So then you just throw the decimal in there after. Okay, so that's how you can kind of do it in your head a little easier. All right, so those are some of the tools that we were using. So now let's do a little adding fractions, adding and subtracting. So we'll say adding and subtracting fractions. I put them together because adding and subtracting is pretty much the same thing. Like they require the same skill here, right? So let's say we had the fraction 1 over 4 plus 2 over 3. Okay, so what do we need when we are adding and subtracting fractions? We need a common denominator, right? I've said that like a ton of times this year. So we need a common denominator. So remember, the denominator is the bottom number, right? So we need that to be the same. So I got to find a number that 4 and 3 both go into, right? So multiples, like 4 times something will give me this number, and 3 times something will give me that number, right? Yeah. So the answer here would be 12, right? They both go into 12. So I know that these things in the end are going to be something over 12 plus something over 12, right? Like that's where I'm going with this. So then I say, okay, well, what did I have to multiply this 4 by to get to 12? I had to multiply that by 3. But I can't just multiply the bottom by 3. I have to also multiply the top by 3, right? Because 3 over 3 is just 1, so I didn't change anything, right? That's the idea there. Now, and I look to the other side, and I say, what did I have to multiply that 3 by? Well, I had to multiply that 3 by 4. So I also multiply the top by 4. Okay, so the bottoms here, that's what gets me to 12 on either side. Now I just look at the top. So 3 times 1 over here is 3. 2 times 4 is 8. And now that I have the common denominators, now it's easy. You just have to remember that we just add or subtract the tops, and then we leave the denominator the same. So this would just be 3 plus 8 is 11 over 12. And that's it. Okay, let's do one. Maybe I'll throw one in like this. Let's say that we had 1 and 7/8 minus minus a quarter. All right, so we threw like a mixed fraction in there, right? Okay. The way I would rather, the way I'd like to do these, you can split it up into pieces. I could have, I'll just take the 1 and leave it by itself because there's nothing else in front of here. And I could say 7/8 minus a quarter. I could do that. The way I like to do it though is I like to change this guy into an improper fraction right off the bat. So writing this guy as an improper fraction. So remember the 8 on the bottom here, that's how much it would take to get to a whole number, right? So like 8 over 8 would be 1. Okay. So it's going to be something over 8, right? That's our bottom no matter what. And I got to figure out what that'll be. So the way we do this is it'll really be the same as going 8 times 1 is 8 and then plus 7. So this would be the same thing as 15 over 8. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because 16 over 8 would be 2, right? And so like 1 more 8th would get me to 2. And that's the same thing up here. 1 more 8th would get me up to 2. Okay, so that's 15 over 8 minus 1 over 4. Okay, so common denominator here, I'm going to pick 8 itself, right? I don't need to go any higher than 8 because 4 goes into 8. So I'm going to multiply the bottom by 4 and the top by 4. So we're going to have 15 over 8 minus, and then 4 over 8. Oh, what am I doing? What am I doing, guys? You multiply it by 2. Okay, so 2 over 8. That makes more sense. Okay, and then really in the end here, remember their answer is just going to be 8 on the bottom. It'll stay as 8, so it's going to be 8, and then 15 minus 2. So that's the same thing as 13 over 8. All right. So that's the bread and butter of what we're doing here. So here, I'll do that one. Let's do multiplying quickly. I'll do an example of multiplying and dividing, we'll see. So multiplying and dividing fractions. Okay, in a lot of ways, I find multiplying and dividing easier, right? And here's why it's easier. Let's say we have one like this. Let's multiply first. We'll say 2 over 3 times, and they're going to dot for times, and then 5 over 2. So something like that. So multiplying is easy where all we have to do here, multiply straight across, right? I don't need a common denominator. I just multiply the numerators, I multiply the denominators, and then I'm going to have to simplify if I can, right? So we'll say 2 times 5 on the top is 10. 3 times 2 on the bottom is 6. And then I can see here that, well, those are both even numbers, so I know 2 goes into them. So I'll divide the top by 2, divide the bottom by 2. So we get 10 divided by 2 is 5 over 3. Now, while we're looking at that, I just also want you guys to know is we could have got there a little bit different way. So right at this point, I could have actually just canceled the 2 on the top with the 2 on the bottom, right? Stuff on the top can just cancel with stuff on the bottom. It doesn't matter that they were like in different, different fractions there. Stuff on the top can cancel with stuff on the bottom. So right off the bat, all that I would have had left there would have just been 5 over 3. And we do that method a lot more next year and like in grade 11 and grade 12, right? That'll be, if you can do it this way, you'd like to do it that way. Okay. So there's multiplying, dividing, almost the same, like it's almost as easy. So let's say now we had, let's say 4 over 3 divided by, let's say 5 over 6. All right, so now why I say dividing is almost as easy is because division, so here's the statement, dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, and I know that sounds like a mouthful, but what that means is that dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by, and then the reciprocal just means it's flipped upside down. So I just flip these two guys around. So I could just right off the bat change this to 4 over 3, change it to a multiplication statement, and then this will be 6 over 5. Okay, so then just straight across now, right? Multiplying, we just go straight across. So 4 times 6, so we get 24 over, and then 3 times 5 is 15. And then I'm going to simplify this if I can, right? Which I can. 3 goes into both those, right? So I can divide by 3, divide by 3. So we end up with 8 over 5. All right, so that's pretty much it. Now we're just going to do BEDMAS with all the stuff, right? So we can add, we can subtract, we can multiply, we can divide. So now let's do BEDMAS. So BEDMAS, right? Order of operations is what I should have said there. But so here, let's give a question like this, where I'm gonna, let's say we had 2.75 plus 3 over 4, and then you've got it in brackets, and then maybe minus 0.5. So let's do a question like that. Now, this might be a funny example because we get to choose what way we want to do this question, right? I could choose to do this with fractions, right? I could change this to a fraction, and I could change this to a fraction. I could deal with the fractions. That'd be fine, right? You get the same answer out in the end. This one, though, actually sure seems like it would be a lot easier to think about it in decimals, right? Like keep it in decimals. This almost reminds me of like a money question, right? You've got $2.75. You've got 3 quarters, which I know is 75 cents, right? 3 quarters is literally 75 cents. So yeah, let's write it out that way. So we'll say 2.75 plus, and then this is the same as 0.75, right? And then minus 0.5. Now, order of operations. What do I got to do first? I got to do brackets, right? Inside the brackets comes first. So I'm gonna do this part. So we've got 275 plus 75. So if you had $2.75, you add 75 more cents. How much money would you have? Well, you'd have $3.50. And then I've got this last part, this next part. So now we've got 350 minus 0.5 is the same thing as 0.05, right? That's 50 cents again, right? So in the end, 350 minus 50 cents, I mean, is 3, right? So you got $3 left. So there. Okay. So let's do some more. So let's say we had one like this. So we've got 0.5 times 2 minus
coffee break.
So 0.5 times 2 minus, and here I'm going to throw this one at you. Square root of 4 over 36 divided by 2 over 3. All right, so there's a bunch of stuff there. Some people might get freaked out by the square root, but that's okay. We know how to handle that, right? We did that in the last unit there, or first unit, I guess. All right, so the way I am going to want to handle this one, I think, is with fractions. So I'm going to try to turn everything into fractions here and then deal with it. So let's change this 0.5 into a fraction, right? So I could say, well, that's the same thing as a half. So I got 1/2 times 2. And if you like, I can call that 2 over 1, just so that it looks a little bit more like what we, when you're going straight across, it makes a bit more sense here. And then minus, and then what do I do with this? Square root of 4 over 36. Both of those are perfect squares, aren't they? So the square root of 4 is just 2, and the square root of 36 is 6. Okay? And then divided by, and then 2 over 3. I'll just leave that there. And you know what? One more time, I'd like to simplify that guy a little bit smaller. So I'm going to write it all again, but just simplify that one. So we get 1 over 2 times 2 over 1 minus, and then I can divide this one top and bottom by 2, right? So that's going to be 1 over 3, and then divided by 2 over 3. All right, so now, according to BEDMAS, we just got to do this in the right order. So in this case, according to BEDMAS, right, division and multiplication come before addition and subtraction. So that just means I've got to do these two and then subtract them, right? So that's the idea there. The multiplication and division happen first, and then we subtract those two things. So we've got 1/2 times 2 over 1. You guys are probably ahead of me on this one. You can think about this lots of different ways. The 2's cancel. You go straight across and simplify. Either way, that's 1, right? Which makes sense. 1/2 times 2 would give you 1. Okay, so then you get, so 1 minus, and then we've got 1/3 divided by 2 over 3. So what do we do when we're dividing? That's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm going to flip those guys upside down. So that'd be the same as 1 over 3. I'm going to change that to times 3 over 2, right? So I just flipped those two guys. Okay, and then working my way down again, I'm going to say 1 minus, and then I'm going to simplify these guys. So again, you could go straight across and then simplify, but this one seems nice, right? It's staring me right in the face. I've got a 3 on the top. I got a 3 on the bottom. Those guys cancel. All I'm left with is 1 over 2. If you didn't like that method, do it the other way. You could just go straight across and then simplify. You're going to get 1 over 2 either way. Okay? So then I think we can do this one in our head. 1 minus 1/2. We don't even need to make common denominators here, I don't think. 1 minus 1/2, you got 1/2 left. Okay. Maybe I'll do one more tough one, but then that's it. That's everything we did there. So let's find a tougher one here. Yeah. All right, so let's go -2 over 3. And then 3 over 4 minus -3 over 4 divided by 13 over 6 times -2 over 3. Whew, that one was gross. Lots of stuff going on. All right, so according to BEDMAS, we need to multiply and divide first, right? And really with the multiplying and dividing, they don't really matter in the order of things. They're not supposed to matter in the order of things. So we actually just do it left to right. Sorry, I should be scrolling around here. So if you're not sure whether, like in this case, whether we should like divide or whether we should multiply, we're going to do it in the order that it's written, just left to right when we're deciding between multiplying and dividing, okay? So that one's multiplying, right? That one's dividing, and then it's multiplying in between those two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one first, okay? And this one, and then this one, right, to multiply, because it's like multiplying comes after division. And then very last, subtraction, right? Subtraction comes at the end. That's the big one there. So let's do this front one first. We got -2/3, yada, yada. Okay, and again, maybe I'm going to show you guys my fancy little way. We could, if you guys don't like this, it's fine. Just go 2 times 3 and 3 times 4 and then simplify. But man, this one seems nice, right? I got a 3 on the top. I got a 3 on the bottom. So those cancel. And then really what I have left here is 2/4. Okay, so 2/4. Well, that would, I can simplify those too, right? That would turn into like 1/2. So that whole thing is just -1/2. If you get the hang of that, that's sure simple, right? But like I said, if you didn't like that, don't worry about it. Just do the long way, okay? So -1/2. I'm going to leave the minus, so minus. And now I'm going to do this division part. So let's rewrite it first. I'm going to say -3/4. And I'm going to change this to times 6/13. And then times -2/3. Yeah, and remember when brackets are just written beside each other like that, it means times as well, right? I didn't have to write times. Okay, working our way down. So we've got -1/2 minus. So then this one here, we'll just go straight across, right? So we'll do it that way this time. So we'll go, keeping it in brackets for now. So we've got -18, right, over 52. And then times -2/3. Okay, and it sucks that I gotta keep writing it all the time, but we'll just do it again. So -1/2 minus, and then, well, I'm not sure exactly looking at this right now what goes into it, but again, I do know they're both even numbers. So let's just go from there, right? Let's say, well, 18, I can go 18 divided by 2. So 18 divided by 2 is equal to 9. And then 52 divided by 2 is 26. Okay? So that should be it, right? I don't think there's anything else that goes into that one. So moving on to the next one here, we got -2/3, right? So just leave it at that. So now the same thing. Let's just get the order right here. I got to do this one next. I got to do the multiplying before I do the subtracting, right? So write it all again. 1/2 minus, and then I'm going to do this one. And now that we're here too, is my answer for like this middle part, this everything in here, is it gonna come out positive or negative, right? And this is where you have to look here. I've got a negative times a negative. This thing's coming out positive, right? Negative times negative gives me a positive. So that it's going to be positive. So then I'm going to say, just straight across, we're going to have 9 times 2 is 18, and positive 18. And then 26 times 3 is 78. Yeah, this one's really turning out gross, isn't it? All right, so now we got to find the common denominator between these, right? We're subtracting, so it's gonna be a big one. In this case, it's gonna be, well, it's gonna be 78, right? Because they're both even numbers. I know that 2 goes into 78, and if you're not sure what number to multiply by, you can just go 78 divided by 2, right? That'll tell you, well, it's got to be 39. So I have to multiply this side by 39 on the top and the bottom. So we end up with, so that'll be 78 in the bottom. So 39 times 1 is 39. Don't forget there was a negative there as well. So -18. So then in the end here, we've got negative 39 minus 18. So that means you're at negative 39 and you go 18 to the left. It's like the same thing as going 39 plus 18, right? But in the negative direction. So we've got negative 57 over 78. Okay. And I think that's it. Yeah, I don't think we can do anything there. Yep. So there you go. There's your answer. So kind of messy. That'd be a tougher one, right? But that is one that you guys are expected to be able to do as well. So